very good. I think Scott Brown puts in a Scott Brown playing Rangers performance, he was just everywhere. It was a couple of times he was a bit almost too excited, and a bit in his decision making was maybe a bit wild, but he was very good as well. I think it's almost easier to pick out the guys who didn't have a good game, because I think the team overall was very steady. But if you're going to play a man of the match, for me, it was the midfield three: Johansson, Bitton, Brown, and also Cummins. And as I said, forget about the goals. I think he put in a real shift, and he worked in with the system. And he was really focused, and he was really playing for the team. So I think one of those four. But as I said, it's easier to pick out people who didn't have a good game.
Craig Gordon did nothing, frankly. A disgrace.
Yeah, shocking.
Came for a couple of crosses, but a bit of a wage thief this week, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm. What do we think of the defence?
I think I'd said it on Sunday. I thought Van Dijk was very good. It wasn't troubled in any way, but one of the things we've had in the past against Rangers is our supposed massive centre halves have been bullied by the Rangers front line. I think I mentioned it. I remember Kenny Miller ragdolling Glenn Loovens at Ibrox when they just walked straight through him. But you could see from very earlier on that Denayer and particularly Van Dijk, there was absolutely no way they were going to be bullied. There wasn't a great deal of pressure on them, but what they did was calm, composed, and it was really pleasing to see, because a lot of the times against Rangers in the past we've lost the physical battle, and that's kind of lost the game overall. But it was quite clear from the start that wasn't going to happen.
It's kind of creeped up how good that defence, or the back five, really can be, both in terms of system-wise, but also the quality of each player as well. And you can just look at the facts. I think after the international break, so after the Hamilton game, Celtic has conceded just 3 goals in domestic appearances when it's Denayer and Virgil as the centre halves. So you suddenly, almost without realising it, you have a back five that's actually very solid, both in terms of player quality and the way, they've actually played together a lot. I know Lustig haven't been there that many games, but he fits in quite naturally. So I think you have just a really good defence now.
For hopefully a long time, but not very likely.
Until the summer.
Yes. And we'll come back to that in a wee minute.
But I had noticed as well for the defence, the fullbacks weren't as adventurous as they normally are. It was more of a kind of tight unit with the back four together, because majority of our games he's just constantly at the top. He's barely defending because he's just so much attacking. Same with Lustig, but they were a lot more reined in a little bit, so they were a wee bit concerned. But after a while, you could see there wasn't really any much point, because as the first half went on, you could see the gap between Miller and the rest of the team getting bigger and bigger. So there was only going to be the one man up front. So the fullbacks could have got away with going up a bit further, because you did 2 of the centre halves. B. Tom was there to help as well, and then also Brown himself. So the fullbacks could have been influencing a bit more further forward, but it didn't seem to.
I think you're right, but what I would say is, we've touched on already, the game was a bogey as soon as the second went in, so I don't feel there was a huge need for that. And also with the pitch, there's maybe that danger. Is it harder to get back when you don't have the give there that you expect from the pitch? Would it be easy to kind of slip up?
So another thing I was going to say as well, it's good to see we're starting to get a few more goals now from crosses. The cross for Griffiths again got a header, I think, the weekend. Go back to the Millwall game, Lustig as well. So we're starting to now kind of change our game a little bit, where it's not always constantly on the floor and we're just constantly trying to wait till we get that slight gap in the defence. We're now got the ability where we can actually go wide and get the cross in. So you've got 2 different ways of attacking, which the defensive team are going to find hard to know which way is going, so you can have a bit more
brings a bit more to your game.
Variation to the game, so it makes us more than just a one dimension where we're just trying to play that killer pass to break the defence down.
Anthony Stokes, Chris Sermanni.
I've never been a huge fan, but I called for his inclusion in this game because I thought his performances had been a lot better. I think I'd mentioned in the past, he's kind of bought in. Was one of the first people to buy into the Deila idea, if you know what I mean. And I think, to be fair to Stokes, I think the pitch played a part in that. But any time he got the ball, he looked sluggish. He lacked invention. I think the fact that it was so easy for us kind of masked his performance a little bit. But I wasn't impressed. If I had to pick one player to say I thought had quite a poor game from us, it would have been Stokes.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think, as Chris says, I think Anthony Stokes, if you manage to combine Anthony Stokes' willingness to work within that system and do the roles that Deila want from your white men with Chris Cummins' talent, you'd be sorted. And I think, I think the wide positions with those two there haven't quite worked because, well, one of them have the intention to do it, but not really the quality to do it. I think Chris Cummins probably have the quality, but maybe not the intention or the willingness to do it that much this season so far. But he did do it on Sunday, and he was very effective in it on Sunday as well, Chris Cummins. But I think we're probably going to move on to this quite soon as well. But with Armstrong and GMS coming, I think Stokes is the one who's probably most likely to drop out as well.
And Ciaran, you agree, Stokes?
Yeah, I just was one of his kind of poorer performances of recent games because he has done really well, does put in a good shift and been helping out. But with the new arrivals, I feel he'll probably be one of the first to come off his position will be the first to be filled by one of those two.
And it is a shame to a degree because, as you say, he's having maybe started the season relatively poorly. He's really started to actually put the effort in, certainly, in a role that he's maybe a little alien to him, playing out in the wing.
It was the thing you need to say about Stokes is Deila needed some allies earlier in the season, and he was a really effective one for him. From where we are now, and especially after the game on Sunday, I mean, I think the perception amongst Celtic fans of Deila, on a wider scale, has really changed. I think the fact, you've seen pictures on social media of him dancing in the pub and that, and people are talking about Deila, chanting his name. There's a lot of earlier in the season it was only like maybe guys like us. There was fewer fans, if you will, and I think Stokes played an important part in that transition because, as Christian said, he's maybe not the most talented member of the squad, but he basically said, "I get what you're trying to." Well, I'm perceiving that he said, "I get what you're trying to do," and he really made a go of it, and I think that was really important to Deila.
But then you might find out he's Mulgrew Part 2, where although we've brought in the two new boys who probably will fit more in that position, Stokes might just keep that because he has an ally of Deila the way that Mulgrew seems to be, because Mulgrew just seems to go straight back into that team no matter who's playing there. So the same could apply to Stokes.
Not now.
But
we're hoping that.
He's not a bad footballer, Stokes, and by putting that shift in as well, I think he's always going to get games. And as you said, I think it's spot on that Deila's probably been willing to play him at slightly outside his comfort zone just because he's willing to do that job, and he's got the qualities when he can get into the box and to actually finish as well. So I don't think it automatically means he'll never get a game. I think it's the right thing to start him on Sunday just because of the occasion, and he would put a shift in, and he is quite experienced in those kind of things. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that transition between getting the new guys in to get games and also who he's going to start phasing out as well. Because I think January is always a good time to come in sometimes because you get half a season where maybe not everything is much is expected of you, but you still get quite a large amount of time just to get used to surroundings and set you up for the new season. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that.
Johansson was a big example of that. Was Johansson came in last January, took at the end of last season. It wasn't the greatest time, but he was adapting to Celtic, adapting to life in Glasgow, and it seems to be the better for him because, I mean, look at the start of this season, he's kicked off, and what a player he's become.
Have to get used to accent. It takes a few months as well. The
speed's a problem. Even when you go to London, it's a problem for them. So, did I mention I was in London?
You were hanging out with Nick Clegg, you said?
Yes, Nick, like that.
Tell the listeners why, they're curious now.
Nah, they're not. If you've got today's Metro, that was a gig. It's a bit of
it's Chris and Kate Moss.
Bit of an exclusive in London.
With Nick Clegg. So, just before we kind of finish up with the game, which we pumped Rangers 2-0.
Got them rid.
Yes, they were rid always. So man of the match, Christians went with Bitton, Brown, Commons and Johansson.
I'm going to go with Stefan Johansson.
Chris, who's your man of the match? Ciaran will go with. Chris is biscuit full at this point.
Goodness, unprofessional are you, Mr. Sermanni?
That's STV Glasgow, I'm going to call now.
No, I'm happy to stick with Brown as well. I thought Brown did well, controlled the game, controlled the team, getting about it, just broke play up, and yeah, I think he deserved to be man of the match.
Brown, Bitton or Ian over?
I think you need to go for Brown or Bitton. I'll say Bitton because I think some people had question marks over his toughness, if you will, because a lot of the time the preamble before the Old Firm games or Celtic Rangers games, whatever you're going to call them, the preamble is that we need to be tough, we need to have that bit of metal on the park, and some people had questioned if Bitton had that. He proved that you don't really need that. I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't tough, but he just let his ability do the talking.
If you got the quality, that'll shine through.
That's exactly it. And I thought he answered any criticisms of him really well. But I wouldn't care if it was either Brown or Bitton. Both were excellent.
And Bitton is tall. I like tall defensive midfielders.
Good to know. Wow.
I think as well,
Statuesque.
it's just his confidence. He's not phased. He's able. He's quite maybe not willing, but he's capable of taking the ball under pressure and able to release it without making
Composure.
a mistake. Yeah, a lot of composure, and his performances since he's come in now over the last 7-8 games, he seems to be getting better and better. Which I think he just needed that running the team, and he's just shown the kind of quality player that he is.
Composure or unmulgrew is how I would describe it.
Yeah, he isn't Charlie Mulgrew, so that's another reason why I'm giving it a Bitton over Scott Brown. Was Charlie in the studio? I can't even remember.
No, it was John Hartson, who apparently ate a wee bit of humble pie, I think, after it.
He did actually.
I do remember him
John
saying
Hartson eating?
Yeah, I know he's saying I've maybe been given a bit of stick to dial and there's a little bit of egg in my face.
Oh, right.
Fair play, Johnny. Fair play. My man of the match would be Scott Brown, surprisingly enough.
Surprised there is a.
But no, I think he was fantastic. He maybe did make a couple of slip-ups where Bitton didn't. However, we talk a lot about how we dominated them and Rangers didn't do very much, but a big part of that I think was Scott Brown just breaking up the play. Just kept up tackles everywhere, getting the ball off them, passing it on. I think it was
And while Rangers were poor, a lot of that I think is because of the way they just out-muscled, pressured and just were all over them in the first half, and it just strangled the game out of them as well. So they never gave them a chance to, light a fire or spark anything like that.
Yeah, and made for the goal, Scott Brown breaking in, getting past those men. It
was quite fun as well for all McCulloch's talk beforehand about we're underdogs, all the pressure on Celtic. They're the ones that got to come out, and yet within the first 30 seconds, both he and his defensive partner sliced 2 clearances. So they did it under pressure. So it was kind of like, well, you can help yourself.
And he reverted to stamping and elbowing.
I think from the kick-off as well, I mean, it really stuck in my mind that I had a suspicion they might come at Celtic. They might just say, look, let's kind of go down fighting if we're going to. The first thing they did was they took centre, played the ball back and launched it up the park, and I thought, today's going to go exactly to script, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. I don't think there was any point in the game that you felt there was a real danger, even before 2-0. And you've always got at the back of your head that it's the club purporting to be Rangers, so we've got to be an edge here. But I don't think there was ever any danger.
I still felt it to the first goal, and I just thought, we're doing all this, we've got the possession, we're in the forefoot. You just were expecting it to run against the runner play. They would maybe score. That first goal did relieve a lot of, not a lot of nerves, but it was still that kind of Old Firm game. You still had that wee bit of kind of.
To be fair, when they were at their peak, we would still generally just dominate play, and then they would hit out with some nonsense counter-attack goal or a penalty or whatever it was. And I think a wee shout out to Scott Brown's point to the scoreboard. I think it was pretty cheeky, Scott. Pretty cheeky. Liked it.
Just letting the whole stadium know what the score was at that point.
I think it was necessary. Do we have any other points about the game we want to bring up before we move on?
I'll just reiterate, and I don't know what everybody else's feelings on it is, but I didn't really miss the the Old Firm game or the Celtic Rangers game when it was away, and I've got